But I don't want to talk to you today about optical illusions. I want to instead talk to you about what I call obstacle illusions, the faulty perceptions that form barriers in your head to success. If being a professional magician for 4 decades has taught me anything, it is of the staggering capability of the human mind for self-deception. Any of us can convince ourselves of anything, no matter how ridiculous. For example, here is a photograph of 3 young men levitating while in a state of transcendental meditation. In 1959, the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi emigrated from India to the United States, preaching his gospel of peace and tranquility through TM. And he counted the Beatles among his millions of followers in the West. The Maharishi claimed that while meditating in the lotus posture, he could actually levitate up from the floor. No one ever saw him do it, and it was never captured on camera. How convenient. Nevertheless, he crisscrossed the entire continent, promising that his followers would learn the art of levitating the body at will and even the power of invisibility. Now, to be fair, I did find one picture on the internet, this one, of the Maharishi levitating while invisible. Explain it to the people next to you. I'll wait. He founded the Maharishi University in Fairfield, Iowa, and promised his students that they would learn to levitate. And he offered as proof pictures like these. And you have to admit, these are pretty impressive photographs, right? In fact, they are so impressive that they have led me to temporarily violate the magician's code and give away the secret. I am going to reveal right now the secret of transcendental levitation. I am going to levitate myself right here on this stage, exactly as these young men are doing so, with one small exception. I will not assume the full lotus posture, otherwise I would have to discontinue the program. Now, if you're in the back, you're probably going to need to either watch on the screens or stand up so that you can see. I'm going to sit here on the stage, and I am going to levitate myself just as these young men are doing. In fact, you may want to get your camera out. You're going to want to take a picture of this. I will tell you precisely when to take the photograph. Now! That is exactly what they're doing. Look at their hair. Look at this guy's tie. That's because the picture was snapped a microsecond after the peak of the jump. If these 2 ladies look at their hair, the one on the right, they just cropped out the trampoline. Why would they do this? It's because the Maharishi taught them that hopping was the first stage of flying. And if they would hop enough times, eventually, they would hover. It's been 6 decades since the Maharishi promised his students that they would learn to fly. Not one of them has ever done it, but they're still trying. To this very day, at the Maharishi University in Fairfield, Iowa, right now, they're in a little room hopping. And I know what's happening. After one of these sessions, one guy turns to his buddy and says, "Did you see on that 3rd hop, I think I caught some air. It was really brief, but I'm pretty sure I did. If I just keep it up for a few more years." You say, well, that doesn't count because those guys are morons. Really? One of them's famous now. Anybody recognize this guy right here? I wouldn't expect you to. He's better known for his books than he is for his face. This is John Gray, author of Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. Now, John Gray is a pretty smart guy. He's got a PhD. He's written about 20 books. Who can even keep track anymore? He's made tens of millions of dollars on the speaking circuit. That guy spent 9 years of his life in Fairfield, Iowa, trying to levitate. Now, that's a kind of a funny illustration. Let's use a more serious one. In the 1980s, an Australian woman named Rosemary Crossley, who worked with children who suffered from severe mental disabilities, created a theory that the children with whom she worked actually possessed fully functioning mental capacities, but merely lacked the motor skills needed to speak, write or type what they were thinking. In other words, they were much like Dr. Stephen Hawking was the last many years of his life, but for a totally different reason. What they needed was technology to enable them to communicate what they were thinking. And so she developed a technique called facilitated communication, or FC. The results were so amazing that a Syracuse psychologist named Dr. Douglas Bicklin brought the technique to the West and opened the first FC center in the United States at Syracuse University in 1992. And a social movement was spawned that swept the entire continent. It was a very simple technique. Crossley theorized that if you would just use your hand to support the wrist of the disabled person over a keyboard, that would improve their aim and enable them to type what they were thinking. And the results were absolutely astonishing. One boy in Atlanta, Georgia, saw his IQ raised from 35 to 104 with the help of his facilitator. Thousands of students were mainstreamed right into their grade levels. Morley Safer did a special on 60 Minutes and interviewed the mother of one of these young men as she wept openly on camera and said, all of this boy's life I've thought he would never be anything more than a teddy bear to me. And now I discover he has everything I want my son to have. And Morley Safer even asked the lad a question. He said, who is meeting right now at Camp David with President Clinton? And with his mother facilitating, supporting his wrist, he typed out Arafat and Rabin. Tens of thousands of facilitators were trained in all 50 states. Tens of millions of dollars were spent. ABC called it a miracle. CBS said it was a major breakthrough. And then something went dreadfully wrong. In 2006, in Pontiac, Michigan, a 15-year-old girl, through her facilitator, typed out that her father had repeatedly raped her. Social services was called. 5 police cars descended on the man at work and hauled him out in handcuffs. 5 more police cars descended on the supposedly complicit mother while she was visiting her own mom and carted her away. Though neither parent had a criminal record, lengthy prison sentences were dangling over both of their heads. The sister and her brother were shunted off to foster homes. Reputations were ruined, careers were destroyed. And then when the charges were proved demonstrably false, somebody decided to test just how accurate FC was. It was a very simple test. They would bring a disabled person and their facilitator into a room like this one and set up a projector like that one. They would flash a letter on the screen, B, and the disabled person would type B. They would put a picture of a house and they would type out house, 100% accuracy rate. And then they erected a partition so that the disabled person could see the screen, but the facilitator couldn't. The accuracy rate dropped from 100% to 0 in every iteration of the test. There could be no other conclusion. Tens of thousands of people, many of them highly educated, very smart, were typing the message using somebody else's finger. And the disabled person never had any idea what was being typed. The purpose of me telling you this story is not to make fun of those good, decent, smart people who were just trying to help. It is to point out that any of us can convince ourselves of anything. Regardless of how smart you are, irrespective of your IQ or your education, you can convince yourself of anything and be absolutely certain that it's true. Nevertheless, to be wrong. So my advice to you today is take the red pill. Have you seen the Matrix movies? The plot of the Matrix is simple. The world that we all perceive around us doesn't exist. It's just a computer simulation fed into the brains of human beings, all of whom are actually in pods in suspended animation, kept there and used as batteries to power the computer that created the Matrix and runs it. The star of the movie is Keanu Reeves, who plays Neo, a guy who just seems to notice odd things happening around him, a glitch here and there, inconsistencies in his world. And then the other star of the movie, Lawrence Fishburne, plays Morpheus. He's a renegade human being that lives outside the Matrix and seeks to undermine it. He senses that Neo might be ready to hear the truth, and so he hacks into his brain. And he holds out 2 pills, a red one and a blue one. He says, if you take the blue pill, you go back to sleep, wake up tomorrow morning, believe anything you want to believe. But if you take the red pill, then you stay here with me and I'll show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. Are you willing to tell yourself the truth?